Welcome to a Facebook Live with myself, Bill Free. I'm the founder of Pure Presence Conferences, and we have another conference coming up in April called Know Thyself. And Paul Hedderman is joining with us today because he's one of our presenters for the conference. And I'm very grateful that Paul was able to say yes to be one of our speakers. And thank you for joining us on Facebook Live today, Paul, and for being part of the conference.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Well, for many of you may not know who Paul is, but I've known who Paul is and about Paul for many years, as many of my friends have told me about Paul. Do you know Paul Hedderman? I go, no, and I would go and check him out, as I'm sure most of you will do after you watch this Facebook Live. And Paul Hedderman is a very interesting character. He is, I would say he's an awakened being, as many of you are, and you just don't know it. But he is one that has gone through many years of A Course in Miracles. He's been in recovery and also been, I would say he has passed recovery, and now he helps recovery communities to come to an understanding that's beyond A Course in Miracles. It's beyond the Blue Book or the Big Book. And thank you, Paul, for being willing to come on Facebook Live. And I'd just like to ask a few questions about what you share in these recovery groups and how that relates to A Course in Miracles and the non-dual teaching.
Well, what we share is the exact nature of the wrong. Yeah. So there's a lot of effects in the Big Book of AA, a lot of effects of the exact nature of the wrong, explained and illustrated beautifully. But I don't believe they got to the real root of the dilemma, which is the act of being identified as a self, which is the idea of self is the feeling of being the doer, the thinker, the haver, the loser, the hearer, the smeller. Yeah, this sense of being a long-lasting, independent, separate thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel that act of being identified as self is ongoing activity in the mental processes, and almost, if you could look at it as a parasitical movement, if someone has ever been under the throes of addiction or alcoholism, it's a pretty hostile event, either flamboyantly or quietly. So if you see that, if you could look at it as something foreign to us has entered us, yeah, that's something foreign to us, realizing the hostility it produces in the host has to have an incredible strategy. So it has to convince the host that the host is the parasite. So to me, the addiction of the mental state to this idea of self is a way of replacing the sense of us or I with a me, so to speak. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's called, what we call in recovery is the bondage of self. And to me, the bondage of self is an addiction to this act of being identified as self. Yes. Now, I'm not saying you're addicted, but the mental state is addicted. And usually we're identified as the mental state, so we cast it as I'm addicted. I don't believe there's a you that's addicted. I believe there's an addiction expressing as a you. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to bring into the community of AA, because it says in our book that the people who wrote the book only had at the most 4 years of sobriety, the Big Book. And they said basically this power is going to constantly reveal to us a lot more. We know but a little, but people who come after will add on to it. We're not adding on to it the principles or the traditions or the suggestions. We're adding on to a clarity about the exact nature of the wrong, basically.
Right, right. And
This,
you have a Course in Miracles background also. Do you use the Course in Miracles in your AA recovery talks?
um, well, there may be a use of it, but it's not obviously there. There's a beautiful thing we try to dwell on a lot through over the years, from I think page 469 of the inner foundation uh, thing, which is a quite a description of what we're not. So to me, it's like a pure negation, and it captures. It says many things, and one of them is this idea that we're firm in faith in this something else to be ourselves, and in that is an active denial of what we are. So that to me is the duality of the situation. Most people would not believe they're in an active denial of what they are. But if you can show them that there's the mental state is firm in faith in this something else that you have made to be yourself, then you could see the real effect is a denial of what you are. Yeah. So
Yep.
I like to go to that one. A couple of things I've learned in the course. Obviously, lesson two, you and I give everything all the meaning it has. And also the very soothing uh, declaration of, hey, you and I are dreaming this dream and we're going to dream ourselves out of it. And as we do, the dream will get happier. So there's no winning or losing in this situation. You are what you're looking for already. And if you feel like you want to be a success by waking up and doing this and doing that, you already are one. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
mission has been completed, so to speak.
yes.
They thought there was no mission.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Paul, you wrote a book called The Escape to Everywhere.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I didn't
What?
really even write it.
Oh,
Somebody, I had no idea about Amazon and stuff. I wrote it. It was transcribed from talks,
oh, from
but
talks. Okay.
I had no idea about Amazon. And someone brought seemingly a book already and said, "Hey, I wrote a book." And
Nice.
I said, "All right." And I said, "Well, my name's on it, so I should better read it." And then I edited it, and he wanted to keep. He was trying to capture uh, how it sounded as I was expressing it, not any real uh, sequential understanding, just a sense of the energy of the events of the talk, satsang. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I thought he did a pretty good job. So that was
cool. And
I haven't read it.
there's a statement in the book that I read that says that consciousness is going through the doors of the senses and meeting itself there.
Well, meeting it through there, yeah. It doesn't meet itself in this, it meets itself through the senses, but not as the senses. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right, right.
It was a nice way of saying it. Because what I feel is, you know, looking at this place, I would say this is a place of verbing. Yes, it's a dream of verbing. There's really no nouns to be found. The mental preoccupation is to place nouns amongst the verbs. Unfortunately, then the nouns get emphasized and the verbs get underemphasized. So, like when you were a kid, if you weren't in a violent situation, basically life was happening pretty cool. And then there was a certain point where you did something and it was accompanied by thought. And then everything that happened after that has been accompanied by thought. And then suddenly, life is happening is seen as life's happening to me, which to me is an interpretation. I don't see it as living. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I feel the consciousness, the seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching is what's actually happening. Yeah. And the mental state reacts to that and claims the seeing to imply a seer. Yeah. So it claims the hearing to imply a hearer. It claims the feeling to imply a feeler. It claims the doing to imply a doer. And then suddenly the doer is before the doing. The seer is before the seeing. Yet essentially, there can be tons of seeing with no seer, but there is no seer without seeing. Yes?
And where are you?
I haven't checked in a while. I have no idea, really. I haven't. That's part of
Yeah,
the freedom. That's part of the freedom. I don't get a lot of news flashes about where I am or where I was or where I'm going
yeah, right.
to. So I have
Yeah.
no idea where I am, really.
So,
I know I
Paul,
feel. Hmm?
well, I was gonna say in these, I know where you're coming from. I totally, I really, I love the way you express as you're pointing to the thing that we think we are is not what we are,
Yes.
and we keep putting that thing in front of what sees it
Yes.
and claiming it.
Well, we don't, but it does.
Well,
Yes.
it does, right.
I would
Well,
say it's
what
an
is it that's
activity that
claiming it?
has no volition involved in it.
Right. Well, what
It's
is it that's
mechanical.
claiming that identity?
It's just a mental activity. The mental activity uh, that isn't so, but then appears to be so. That's
Right.
all.
And
So
what
it's
is,
if you look at it like this way, the main movement of this idea of selfing is to claim. Yeah. So
yeah,
let's say they're seeing, then something responds or reacts to that seeing, the mental activity, and it claims the seeing implies a seer. Yeah. So by the claiming of the seeing, it derives this idea that there's a seer. Now it just doesn't leave it like that. It presupposes the seer to be before all seeing. Yes. So
yes,
basically, like Ramana Maharshi, a great master, had a statement that all the people who wrote about his teachings, it was in all of them and was always emphasized as quite important. And in one way he said it, he says there's this presupposing, and pre would mean something of time, yes? So a presupposing or a pre-assuming of a non-existent thing. What? Being existent, really. Yeah? So now the presupposing of a non-existent thing, quote unquote, being existing, and then wanting to get salvation for the non-existent thing. If that's the case, and he was assuming that it pretty much is the case from the mental point of view, your spiritual practices themselves are reinforcing the non-existent thing. How can they destroy it? It's a beautiful statement because it can stop what you're not in its tracks so that you can see it not from it, but from what you are. Yeah.
yes, yes,
That's the beauty of these statements. Yeah, they act like pauses to the machinery, so then you can see you're not of the machinery. Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So how does one, we have, I don't know how many people are watching, hundreds of people watching this broadcast.
Thousand,
How
thousand, million.
would you point them to this, to see without objectifying?
Well, I don't do that. What I do is just present what we're not. Yeah. With the faith that you can see it from what you are, because basically you're always seeing from what you are. There's just a not thinking so, but you're always seeing from what you are. What
Yes,
happens is when you see the presentation of what you're not from what you are, sometimes you get engaged in the what you're not and a seeming forgetfulness of what you are. But it
yes,
doesn't change the fact that you're seeing it from what you are. So we're just pointing out, see, because a lot of times when I first went to satsangs, I found people who are trying to describe the indescribable, trying to understand the incomprehensible, and it made no sense to me. And so, why not describe the describable to the indescribable? Yeah. So, I'm not like if you were here, Bill, I wouldn't be trying to convince Bill. I'm actually trying to get through Bill to what you are. Yeah.
yes,
Bill is an impediment to the message. It's not, it's, you're not the mail slot we're aiming for. So when I said to escape to everywhere, a lot of people, when I do talks outside, when I was in LA, they would go to the guy who watched the door and they'd say, "Hey man, everything this guy says goes over my head." So this guy brought it up to me and I said, "Well, that's where I'm targeting. Yeah, I'm trying to throw it over your head. I want to, because I can throw the message around you. I can't miss everywhere. It doesn't matter where I throw it, everywhere it gets it. But you are a finite little activity. I can get around you. I can throw a curveball that can go past you, how far you can reach. Yes. So basically, uh, one of the points of the talks is to overwhelm the system of what you're not. Yeah.
Mhm.
In other
Yeah.
words, not just comply the message which with the 2-ball juggling, but throw a couple more balls there so that you see the juggling not as your own your own condition, but as a foreign condition. Yes.
Yeah.
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 So, what is it that is aware of this experience?
There isn't a this that's aware. There's an awareness of this and shit. Yeah. But there's
Yeah.
not, oh no, there's no this that's aware of awareness. I
Right.
don't feel. Yeah.
Right. But there seems to be an activity called Paul and Bill, and what is it that is aware of the experience?
Yes, yes. And probably some of the most unaware of the experience of Paul and Bill is Paul and Bill. other people other people know Paul's a freaking alcoholic before Paul does. So the awareness of Paul is very limited and but but I mean Paul's awareness, but awareness of Paul is very clear. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So this is the whole point. I feel non-duality, if there's any direction in it, it's negation. It's negating. It's not affirming, because if you are what you're looking for, you're not going to affirm it by affirming it. You're going to affirm it by negating the other. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other activity. So to
Yeah.
me, non-duality isn't just because there's nothing new in non-duality for 2022. It's the same. Yeah. But I
Yeah.
feel there's different ways it's presented that lend a direction to it. And I agree with one more than others. Yeah. And I think negation is a, a clear pointing for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. That's the netty netty. Would you call that the netty netty?
Not so much the netty, but netty is a point, because usually there's still a sense of being the one that's saying not this, not that.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it
Yeah.
has its limitation.
Yeah. There's something
This
that,
is more, yeah.
yeah. Well, even the netty netty, you're is almost like the observer, and there's something that sees that.
Yes, exactly. And so let's say there's an observer, or let's say there's the observed, and then there's the sense of observing, and then that's claimed to make an observer. See?
Yeah.
So every time there's a seeing of something, the mental state arises in time. This is the beauty of it. There is a before where there's just seeing. Yeah. But it arises in time when there's an event of seeing and claims the seeing to imply a seer. And a lot of people uh, don't see that. So they see, let's say, the first uh, let's say there's a you, and then there's you is observed as the thief. So now you're seeing that which used to call Paul as something other than Paul. But there's a sense that it's Paul that's seeing that. Yeah. So now Paul takes the role of the policeman. Yeah. So you're thinking it's really you seeing that the past thing that you were the thief, but you're actually wearing another uniform called the policeman. So the seeing has been claimed. You don't realize the understanding that it's going to claim everything or anything it comes into contact with. Yeah. And it's mechanical. It's not based on your idea of choice of volition. It just does it. So when you recognize it, it's not like I was the thief, now I'm the policeman. You're neither. Yeah. You're seeing, and you get used to the thing responding to that as a seer. You don't wait to be the seeing by the vanquishing of the seer. You just, the seer goes on as it always does, but you're not buying it. In other words, the glove's there, the hand may even be in it, but the hand hasn't lost its handness because of the glove. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not waiting for shit to be what I am. Yes. In other words,
Yeah. Yeah. So you say that the seer is what God is.
no, the seeing, the
The
seer
seeing is
is the
what God
noun.
is.
Yes. I
Okay.
would say
So
seeing.
the seeing is what God is.
Yes. If
You
you
could
want to
say that.
call it that. I don't like
Yeah.
I
I,
don't
I
think God is anything really,
I
but
don't either. I agree. I don't either. But I'm just trying to give a word symbol. God. I could say the seeing is what awareness is,
yes. Oh, a
or
big M
isness
mind.
is.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
using to use a word as a symbol.
Yeah.
Seeing is what isness is. If it, but it's less than that.
It doesn't matter with less or more. Basically, all I'm interested is seeing what you're not. I'm not
Yes.
interested in trying to see the seeing. I'm not.
Yeah.
I want to see what can be seen and then
Yes.
tell the truth. Yes.
So how does one establish an understanding that provides the open space of only seeing, only handing, and also which includes the glove.
Well, yeah, see this see there's seeing, and then there's an interpretation of it. That's also included. The interpretation is an activity. It's still a verb, but it's implying it's a noun, but it's still verbing. Yes. So the idea is, I lost what you asked me, so hit me again with it.
How does
Uh,
one become this only seeing and before a label, before a commentary, before a noun or a verbing takes
yes,
place? How does one establish
one can't.
that
One can't.
understanding?
One can't. That's the great news. One can't get that. One can't get it.
Okay, there's
It's like,
thousands of somethings happening right here that want to know the answer to that question.
that's the question. You're not going to get it. It's sort of like you hear about a great party, but when you get there, it sucks. Yeah, there you go.
Right. It's not there.
Well, because you're not there.
Okay, good. Yeah,
You go to the party, that ain't you. Yes. That's
right.
just the verb, you going to a party. You don't go and come. Yeah. You don't arise and go down.
Yeah,
It's just the space all this is happening in, obviously.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So help me
Yeah.
out here. I want to know.
I don't want to help you out. That's the beauty of it. Yeah. I want you to be left with whatever's trying to be grabbed. It's great.
Oh, good, good, good.
Yeah.
So you got me on the edge of my seat, and I want to know what you know so that I can not be what you think you are. How do I get there?
You don't, you're there already. No, seriously, it's a cryptic thing, but it's true. This isn't about uh, fulfilling the need to be liberated. It's a liberation from that need to be liberated. Seriously, it's more based on a loss of interest than a focusing of interest. You just lose interest in all the ideas of you because they're not you. They're not about
Yeah.
you.
Yes.
And that loss of interest is what enriches you,
Yes.
because the loss of interest in that idea of self is like a form of slavery, really. Yes, because you're not only occupying what's happening now, you're the carrier of tons of shit that's not happening. And
Yeah.
in that realm, it's playing God and making a lot of mountains out of molehills. It's actually making a lot of shit out of nothing. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so we're not living based on what's actually happening. We are what's happening, entertaining what's not happening, really.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So I feel satsang is sufficient. And if it isn't, satsang will lead you to do what you need to do to allow it to be sufficient, in a sense. Yeah.
Hmm.
I believe the association with truth, rubbing shoulders with it, you'll you'll come up with an understanding, and the understanding has one role: to bring into stark contrast the misunderstandings. That's all the understanding of non-duality is. It's a negation of misunderstandings. Yes.
Yeah.
You don't end up standing on an understanding. You end up standing, reclining, kneeling, stretching from seeing, from awareness. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't, understanding has a value until it doesn't. So the
Right.
understanding of non duality brings into stark contrast a lot of misunderstandings that a lot of other practices actually fit themselves around. They don't threaten it, they don't threaten the self. Yeah. What threatens the self? Becoming something does not threaten the self. Being something threatens the self, because that's the seat it's occupying. Is it's stating that it is being Paul. And in fact it isn't. Yeah. So when you sit with it and you don't have a giant 1,000-year plan and a progression and a moving and a doing yourself into something, it gets left with its own devices, and you have an experience of the emperor with no clothes. You see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You see it not from it. And then that escape to everywhere has already been fulfilled. You're in everywhere. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a true believer in seeing what you're not. Because it's the closest way you can ever get to where you already are. Yeah. Is seeing what you're not. And it's a constant reminder you're not that. Which is helpful here. Yeah. So yeah. So I
There's
like sayings. That's why we have a lot of them a week.
in
And
a satsang environment, someone comes and says, Paul, I'm really having trouble. I hate my husband. I hate my wife. And I have this anger but then that goes away. How do I stop that from happening?
I don't, that's appropriate for another type of Zoom. A lot of times I don't really go there.
Oh, okay.
I don't
So,
go there. I don't see, to me, a non duality, its main emphasis is not to be helpful, really. I don't
and
feel.
then what are the satsangs for?
Well, I have satsangs in recovery, with people who are having trouble, let's say, in the daily experiences and shit. And then I
With
have the non
addictions?
duality. And, one stage, helpful has a purpose. On another stage, it's not so purposeful helpfulness at times. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like in Ramana said a beautiful thing once, supposedly, for the people who don't know Ramana Maharshi, he's like the godfather of non duality, let's say.
Yeah.
It could be one. So, there was a bunch of people that knew him for a long time, and they were talking amongst themselves about, do you think we could teach? And so he walked in. So they asked him, they said, hey, Ramana, do you think we can teach? He says, definitely, but I don't recommend it. So they were like, well, why? And he says, compassion. And they go, why? What about that? He says, well, you'll be in front of a group and you'll feel compassion and you'll dilute the message. Yes. So we try to keep it, the non-duality talks, the platform. We're not talking about current events or relationships much. We're just
Yeah.
trying to get down to the nitty gritty, so to speak.
Yeah.
And with the belief and faith that a clarity about this allows a lightness concerning other topics. You may not get out of them, but you may lose interest in getting out of them. Yeah, which is
Yeah.
sort of a way of getting out of them. Yeah.
But what the having an understanding, it gives the mind that thinks it's a person or the seeing that thinks it's a person. It gives it a bone to chew on as the mind can open up to realize itself. So there has to be a place for that to occur, right?
Well, you're living, so yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that affords those opportunities quite a lot.
And yet there's a lot of people that are on the spiritual path that are wanting to have that Ramana Maharshi, that Paul Hedderman, that master teacher, that Bill Free, that whatever experience, and having understanding, going to satsang, having someone to come and speak can help to open up your mind so that you can begin to self-realize. Yes?
Well, yes, but again, the emphasis is on the message, not the messengers, obviously.
True. Absolutely. True.
Yeah.
True.
So
Yeah.
basically, my role is really dependent on your roles. Yeah. I'm not doing much at all. But if
Yeah.
you feel you need to have someone to give you permission to be okay right now, I'm more than happy to be seen as
Yes.
that.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. And I think that is helpful. And so if you're listening, watching this on Facebook, thank you for being with us today. And please press the share button on your Facebook account and share it with your audience. And Paul Hedderman will be joining us for the Know Thyself conference. We'll spend 90 minutes with Paul, and we'll see where else this goes. And I know that if you're like me, you are going, who is this guy? Thank you, Paul, for being with us. And thank you for joining us on the Know Thyself conference. And all of you, please join us. It's an absolutely free conference. There's about 25 different speakers there that are non-dual teachers. We've got Course in Miracles teachers. We have Paul Hedderman, and he would be more of the recovering and addiction and the not here part of the speakers. And Paul, thank you for being with us today on this Facebook Live.
Hey, Bill, thank you. It was a pleasure
Yeah.
to meet you.
Yeah,
Yes.
same here.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everyone.